Good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you are, and welcome to Nerd Tube. Starting a bit early today, I do apologize if that's going to throw some of you off, but that is how it is. So, this week's episode of season 5, episode 8, it happens to be about Sherry Martell. Before we start talking about the episode in the breakdown, let's just quickly get your thoughts on it. First of all, you, Jose.
I can't really say that I enjoyed this episode. This is honestly one of the saddest episodes that I think I've ever seen in the history of Dark Side of the Ring. Given Sherry's drug history and everything that she's been through, which we will get into, it's one of those things where it's like Sensational Sherry was around, she was ahead of her time, and I wish that she would have stayed with WWE during the Attitude Era. She's one of those what if names that would have definitely survived and thrived in the Attitude Era, I think.
Yep. Boss man.
I'm going to assess this episode on two different levels. One, a kind of like documentary look back at Sherry Martell, the person, and Dark Side. Because I don't think this was a very good Dark Side episode.
Yeah,
I think it was a very good look back at Sherry. So I'm going to mark this in two different ways, if that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Bossman. But what I will say is that this is an episode that, if you look at the bigger picture, it kind of shows you how brutal this industry is. You know, for people who work in it, and how you can give everything to this industry, and it gives you nothing back. Like, it doesn't take care of you. At one point, Cornette says, "There's no rehab. You're on your bike." You know, like, yeah, and so.
I equate it to Montreal after Brett got screwed over, and he was like, Vince McMahon has always had this mentality about treating wrestlers like circus animals. They, break their back for years and years and years of all these years of service. And yes, Block, it is a nerdtacular day. They break their back for years and years, and then they end up with nothing when it's over. And that's essentially what Cornette is saying too.
Because this is the reason why I'm so glad that people like Tony Khan is this. I know people have the criticisms of the man, but what he does, which is second to none, he pays people really well, and when they're sick, he doesn't stop paying them. Whereas Vince McMahon, I don't know if Triple H has reversed that policy. I hope he has, and Nick Khan and whoever's over. Who runs? Is it TQ? Is it now who runs? No, TKO. Sorry, TKO now runs WWE. I'm hoping that they have a policy of looking after their wrestlers while they're injured and paying them well.
To my knowledge, I think they still do, but then you also have to consider the WWE's. They always do their cuts around this time of year. They recently just cut Cameron Grimes and a bunch of other people.
Jinder Mahal.
Yeah, they cut Jinder too. So it's kind of iffy with that policy. Like, sometimes, they'll get taken care of, but then other times it's like they've been known to cut guys while they're injured. So it's an iffy policy.
Yeah.
I always thought WCW was a little bit better with their policies as well, regarding giving wrestlers more time off and stuff like that. But anyway, they never lasted the test of time, and maybe that might be the same for AEW at this rate. Regardless, let's go on to that debate, onto the episode itself. So to my introduction, Sherry, a female wrestler, manager, and valet that left a mark in the industry and had the Midas touch to elevate stars as she associated herself with them. However, her career was never smooth or plain sailing. So we start this episode with her. We hear a recording of Sherry talking about the slam she got in the ring that wasn't fake, glass in her eye not being fake. No doubt, you keep repeating these same things, even though your body might get honed. There is a test of time which will start to have an effect on your body, especially as you get older. And yeah, it definitely wasn't those bumps. Sometimes if you don't land well or whatever, you just got to take it.
And people got to remember too. This was in the 80s and 90s with those old WWF rings. Those old rings, those used to be stiff as shit,
like boxing rings.
Yep, boxing rings. Yep.
Yeah. So right. So because the thing is that plus the thing is that she took bumps on the solid concrete floor.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that I know people do that and they say that it's not fun. I can say taking a bump in the ring isn't fun. You just learn how to do it. But the thing is that what she was doing was taking the bumps on like solid floors and stuff like that, and it's like that's going to compound up with you more than it is taking it in the ring. In the ring, there's a give. In the concrete floor, there is no give.
Yeah, I've no problem with them taking bumps on the outside as long as there's those mats that they land on. That's fine. But the moment you want to, like, sometimes they go into the audience and somebody they do a suplex with the audience, like please, like, honestly, it's just not worth taking the chance. Goku 224 said one word I would describe this episode would be sacrifice. That's a perfect word, mate.
That's a good word for it.
That is the perfect word, I would say. So Cornette mentions that his first client back in 1982 was Sherry. I mean, both of them were green, so they decided to work with each other. And Martell was going to wrestling shows as a kid. When she was a child, she would go into wrestling shows, and she liked it. And she kind of got the bug, like the seed was. They said the seed was planted into her back then for the business. And Jake the Snake Roberts recalls meeting her back then. He was just a referee. He was young, so he was just a referee in the game. And I think she was like 17 at the time as well.
Yeah.
And they kind of had a little fling together, so to speak. Because of Jake being the son of Grizzly Smith, who we have spoken about last year when it came to him, and we all know about Grizzly Smith. And by the way, if you don't know about Grizzly Smith, we've done a review on Dark Side of the Ring. Grizzly Smith, who's the father of Jake Roberts, who also happens to be a pedophile. And check out that review. Yeah. But he was also a wrestling promoter, and Martell went to him to try to get a job, and she was only a kid back then, so he said to her, "Come back when you're 21." All right,
yeah, which is a smart move.
I'm surprised because she was a kid. I'm surprised Grizzly Smith didn't take advantage of her. But maybe 17's a bit too old for him. I don't know. Regardless,
he would have been.
Yeah, he liked them really young, didn't he? So Leroy Gonzalez is Sherry's ex-husband. He met her in the restaurant and then she took him to a pole dancing club which she happened to work at, and he was immediately smitten. So often these guys, they get smitten by a woman who works in a strip club or whatever, but the moment they have her, they don't ever working back at that strip club, which is where they met them in the first place. Yep. Regardless, he bought a trailer, proposed to her, but Sherry still went out, after they got married, still went out with her girlfriends, and she was doing drugs despite Leroy not being a fan of that type of lifestyle. And she tried to settle down. She wanted to have a family, but 3 months after the baby was born, she could not take it anymore and left to be a wrestler. And Sherry found a wrestling school, and it was a school of like hard knocks.
Yep.
And she got slapped around. Sorry, 1 second. She got slapped around by a trainer, and Sherry, now 21, back to Grizzly Smith and persuaded him to get back into the business. Go on, Gaz.
I was just going to say, because a lot of people have told that story that this, basically backyard flaming mudshell wrestler said to her, "Oh, you want to be a pro wrestler?" and slapped the crap out of her, and she went,
"Yeah,
Is that the best you got?" And basically, he trained her up. So,
but this is a go ahead.
And the thing is that this is unfortunately how it used to be until we started to establish proper wrestling skills. That's why I'm glad that I've been trained the way I have, because I've been to 3 wrestling schools and all of them have been reputable. They were by guys that actually you would not, if I started naming them, you'd know, at least be able to Google. And the thing is that there's a standard, and the thing is people don't get mistreated in this way. And that's why I'm glad this sort of old school way, this one through old school things, I'm glad it's gone away. Okay.
Yeah. And this is a teachable lesson to anybody that's trying to break in the business. I mean, it's going to be about sacrificing. You're going to miss, your kids' birthdays. You're going to miss graduations. You're going to miss Christmas. You're going to miss, this and that. So you got to know that if you're going to commit to being on the road, it's a full-time gig, 300 days a year, even now.
The reason why Booker T is not on Dark Side because he doesn't like talking negatively. But also Booker T works for the WWE.
And WWE won't let him do it anyway.
Yeah. Booker T's he's always there as a commentator now, and I think he's a trainer.
Yep.
As well. So exactly. I think the only person who might have a chance of going in between is maybe Mick Foley.
Yeah, Mick Foley can do whatever he wants because he don't give a fuck either way. He's like Bret Hart's the same way. Bret Hart's signed with them. He don't give a fuck. He'll openly disparage WWE to this day.
And he presented the first, I think it's
AEW title while he was signed with WWE.
Yeah, that's the ultimate. I do not give a fuck move.
Yep.
That's like kind of Rick Rude, wasn't it? We being on.
Yeah, Rick Rude went to Raw and Nitro on the same day.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, Martell, now working for Grizzly Smith, had a feud with Rockin' Robin, and then had to work with the Fabulous Moolah. And back then, Moolah was a bit of like a madame. I don't know what the other terminology is, but
she was a gatekeeper.
Yep. She looked after all the women wrestlers. Looked after is a very loose term. She kind of, was in charge of them. She was their boss. She was almost their pimp, so to speak. Because these women were not just wrestlers as well. They did other stuff too. Regardless, there was probably before I get to the regardless, there was also a like a curfew and so on. But regardless, Sherry didn't give a shit about any of that, and would be coming home late after partying or whatever. She was a young girl. This is what she wanted to do. And Moolah didn't like any of that, realized she couldn't control her. And Moolah doesn't like not to be in control. So if you don't fall in line, you're gone. And basically dumps her. But that wasn't the end of Sherry's career. But Sherry, her ex-husband, Leroy, kind of kept tabs on Sherry. And he got a private dick. But Sherry had goons of her own. And they kind of put the shits into Leroy when they realized that Leroy was keeping tabs on them with the private dick, and they basically shit him up, pushed him around, said to leave her alone, and all of this sort of stuff. I don't know how far they would have gone because at the end of the day, he is the father to her son, so it would be interesting to see how far they would have gone.
I mean, in the reconstruction, they still that one of the guys had a gun. I was like, fuck. I mean, that's pretty serious. I mean, seriously,
it's America, dude. Everybody has a gun, man. You know what I mean?
but what I'm saying is that, like, he was threatened with a gun, though. And I think what I would say is, the guy obviously still loved her, and like, the thing is, her son was growing up without a mother, and he was wanting to know, like, I want you to be in your son's life, sort of thing. And the thing is, but she was like building up her career. I mean, because like Sherry Martell was one of the best female wrestlers for that era. I think even if she was around now, I think she did pretty well because considering the standard is pretty high for women's wrestling now. I mean, it's not as
she was ahead of her time, dude.
She was ahead of her time. She's one of those that came around 20 years too early, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was surprised by how many bumps she took.
Yeah.
Look, as somebody who grew up watching her, I'm actually not surprised because
I'm not. Yeah.
I mean, because I saw that she was capable of taking those bumps. She was a bit like I don't want to go too far ahead because I'm going to talk about managerial career as we go on, but she was like a female Bobby Heenan that she wasn't just she took more than just regular manager bumps. She
actually went in there and choked the shit out of people too.
Yeah, but they knew because she was a wrestler.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But I mean, as a female wrestler, she's one of the ones who
she could work her ass off. Yeah, she could go in there and have a good match.
Her wrestler, you could take bumps. It's just simple.
Her producer flaming Rockin' Robin. I mean, because Rockin' Robin was a great wrestler in her own right as well.
Yep. She looked great, by the way, in this episode.
Oh yeah,
I mean, she looked fantastic. She looked great, man. I was really, really happy for her. Anyway, Medusa, who was kind of inspired, and I love Medusa back in the day. So famous of her dropping the WWE Women's Championship in the bed. That is like her legacy on this. I hate to say it, but that was this.
That's her legacy. Yep.
Mm-hmm. That's her legacy. But regardless, she was inspired. You can see the similarities, by the way.
Yep.
By Sherry and tried to emulate her. And Medusa mentioned that because she was also a mum, it was kind of frowned upon. I mean, not Medusa herself, but Sherry.
The fact that Sherry had a child, it was frowned upon back then.
Yeah. It's for women to have kids. Like Luna Vachon was another one as well, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So So she kind of kept her son, a bit of a secret. I mean, not a secret, but in the dark, so to speak, because like even her own son never realized who her mum was until like he was 3 years old. For
Yeah,
Christ's
and he
sake.
saw a picture of her in a magazine, and it was like, "This is who your mom is."
One thing I took away is how much you're willing to achieve for achieve your dream. Yeah, exactly, dude. You
Yep.
know, what I mean, but it's like many careers. Sometimes you can do a lot for your work, but your work sometimes just doesn't acknowledge you.
Yeah.
Not in the way it should do.
Like Goku, like I'm trained to be a pro wrestler, and I have set my dreams so low you would not believe that. My dream is just to be on a show, even if it's in front of 3 people and a dog. That is just because I know that like at the age I am, me going to like the big shows is not going to happen. But being on like an indie show, I can do that.
It's good that you have your expectations.
Yeah. So we hear from Jared Gonzalez. He is the son.
This was the hardest part.
I was wondering because we never heard from him in the earlier in the episode, so I thought to myself, is Jared going to be in this? And it seems like he was suffering from some condition, apparently cancer. He lost part of his tongue.
Yeah, he's got he's got something going on, but he don't want to tell nobody.
Yeah, and it was impairing his speech because once again, to jump ahead, you saw what he looked like a little bit in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
When he was there, he was a young man then, so you can see the physical transformation. The guy's skinny, he doesn't even look like the same person anymore. But regardless, Jared doesn't want people to judge her mother for being an absent mother. He's very proud of her achievements, and when he got older, he did spend some time with her on the road, but obviously not that much time. He would try to spend a week with her, but she would only keep him for 2 days and have to send him back.
It's a hectic.
That was her life.
Yeah, it's a hectic schedule, man. Like I said earlier, when you're on the road 300 plus days a year, there were no days off back then. It was like you had to work, and then if you got hurt, it affected you. It affected the other guy. You weren't making the kind of money that they make now because there was no guarantee back then until about 1996. That was when guaranteed contracts started to take effect.
It was when the Monday Night War started. That's when, because I think what happened was that Lex Luger went from WWE to WCW.
Yep.
Because there was no guaranteed contracts, he could just do that, and I think that's what started it.
Oh, and then speaking of, okay, I don't know if y'all heard this, to kind of not go too much into a tangent, but there will be no more non-competes, it looks like, according to the U.S. They're like, yeah, we're going to be kind of getting done with non-competes. So it'll be interesting to see if that affects wrestling.
Non-competes? Sorry, can you elaborate?
Like, okay, back in the day when you would get released, or it still happens now, you would have to wait 90 days before you go somewhere. So they might be getting rid of that.
Well, I think that's the most stupidest thing ever, by the way.
They got rid of it from working. Some extent, because like Nick Nemeth, Dolph Ziggler, appeared on TNA TV. I think he was only like 10 days after he got released from.
It was fun because look, I mean, like how dare like a company sacks you and then after getting rid of you doesn't want you to work, but it affects them. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's just like it's honestly it's the most stupidest thing ever. Like you are not allowed to work with you affected us, but we're also going to release you and not pay you anymore either. Mm-hmm. That's just the most bullshit thing ever. I'm very glad they got rid of that. I hope they got rid of that. I couldn't imagine how tough it must be to be a female wrestler as well as a mother during the 80s. Yeah, you're telling me. I mean, Lena Vachon had a story as well. I mean, both of them were very similar past, by the way.
Yeah.
So Mr. Perfect and Jesse the Body Ventura put a word in for Sherry, and she ended up working in the WWF. And at this particular point, she ended up fighting against her old nemesis, the Fabulous Moolah, who was a champion for 30 years.
Fuck it. Yeah, people moaned about Roman Reigns and how long he was champion. He was champion for 3 years. Moolah was champion for 30 years.
I find that hard to even fathom.
That sounds like that thing when they were like Andre the Giant was undefeated for 15 years. I'm like, I call bullshit.
Yeah, I'm sure you got. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it, like, whose idea was to put this woman who would have been in her 20s back then, to be champion for 30 years? Like,
But it helps when you're basically in control of the whole women wrestling.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess she was. Yeah, I think she was in charge of her own destiny. So yeah,
instead of that doesn't work for me, brother. You could just go, that don't work for me, sister, and that's pretty much how it went down.
Yeah.
Because it says if you try and beat me, I'll double your flaming.
Yep, I'll bury your ass. I'll bury you on the way out.
Whereas Sherry didn't have anything to do with Mueller, so she could just do what she wants.
Well, but at this particular time, the guy who was in charge now was Vince McMahon, who was who bought up all the territory. So what he said when he realized he needed to freshen things up, like he got rid of Bob Backlund and made Hogan the champion. In this particular case, Moolah was out at 55. I think she was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You're done, and Sherry beat her and became the women's champion. And Cornette basically said, as a wrestler, this was probably the highlight of her career as a wrestler. And yeah, I agree with that. Because even though people forget that even though she was a wrestler, she's more probably remembered for being a manager and valet than an actual wrestler, unfortunately, even though she was a good wrestler too.
Same thing with Bobby Heenan. Heenan used to wrestle, but then they don't talk about that. They're like, nope, this dude's always been a manager. I'm like, oh no, he's wrestled.
Which is why he took the bumps he took, because he was able to. Anyway, Robin and Sherry kind of feuded again. And this is where, being in this industry, at the top tier end of this industry, had its negatives because they were all working 7 days a week. Jake Roberts said, days off. What the hell is that? And their bodies were getting wrecked. And this is when you start to self-medicate. And she did alcohol like a lot of wrestlers did. She did cocaine like a lot of wrestlers did, and she smoked a lot of weed like a lot of wrestlers did. Well, that's what you do. You self-medicate.
And I don't know if you're going to mention this or not, but Medusa said that she's seen people.
I'm going to get. I'm going to get to that.
Yeah.
But at this particular point, because she was being a little bit reckless with the self-medicating, she kind of got a little bit reckless in the ring, because when she was having a match with Rockin' Robin, she kicked Robin in the throat and it affected Robin's breathing. The match was able to finish. I don't know who won or lost, but regardless, Martell then went backstage, apologized for what she did, and that kind of shows you who she was away from the cameras. The episode highlighted how WWE did not care about the female division. Well, they just didn't care about their wrestlers just in general, dude. I mean, the division was falling apart, which I'm going to get to as well. But just generally, how many wrestlers have died? And I've said this so many times in so many Dark Side podcasts. How many wrestlers have died at such a young age? And you got to put it down to this brutal industry that made you work your ass off on a regular basis. Without giving you a chance to recover, recoup, rest, whatever. People are too worried about losing their spot and all of that shit.
And to this day, we still don't have a union. We will never have a union. Wrestlers will never unionize. I've said that many, many times, which is unfortunate.
So Vince in the late 80s was kind of done with women's wrestling.
Yep.
But he kept Sherry as a manager stroke valet. Because she was able to cut promos and obviously take bumps better than most managers.
And this is the one negative I have about this episode. I give it with time constraints, but I wish they would have gone in depth with Shawn Michaels and Ted DiBiase and Randy Savage and all that kind of shit. They totally glossed over that. That's my one negative.
Yeah, because I'm sure she first started by Macho Man Randy Savage. I'm sure, because she managed him for about a year and a bit. With the story with Elizabeth, that ended. Then she went with Ted DiBiase. Then she went with Shawn Michaels after that. And it was just one of those things that she was such a good manager. Because she would hit them with something. She would beat the crap out of them. She would, as you were saying before, she would choke them. She would get involved. And the thing is that she was such a good heel playing manager. I mean, she could get heat. That here's this beautiful demure woman. She would just get tons of heat.
Yep. I mean, after like Cornette said, do you want to just be a women's wrestler and make a little bit of money, or do you want to be the manager of the male wrestlers and make a lot of money? And she did that, after Liz had to part from Savage. Miss Elizabeth had to part from Savage simply because Liz is a face, Savage turned heel. She became Savage's new girl and became Queen Sensational Sherri.
Yep, and I'd argue Queen Sensational Sherri was the best incarnation of her entire character. Just with Macho King going crazy and shit, and then Sherri building them up and hyping them up. And then the only other time I really marked out for Sherri is when Shawn turned heel, and they aligned. Like Randy and Shawn are the two best people I think she ever worked with.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Her work with Hall of Heat was pretty good.
Hall of Heat was good too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wish they showed that one part where
Booker I wish they would have showed the Booker T promo just for shits and gigs.
That
would that one.
Yep.
No, because I was watching Sherri when all that. You watched that clip a few times. But you watch Sherri and you could tell that she's really trying to console
Booker T. Yeah.
Like, because he knows he just stepped in there, and you can see he's regretting it. And she's like
she just sits there smiling. She never broke. Like she never fucking sold it. Yeah, that was so great. Yeah,
brilliant.
No, she smelled like she could tell. She's like, oh my god, did you just see that?
Yeah.
So, as a heel manager, you could take big bumps. Sherri mentioned how she got through the pain, and one of the things she did was also taking muscle relaxants. That too. Sherri also being a bit pot smoker was unfortunately at the time failing the WWE wellness policies, and that famous image that we kind of like showing of her going into a room with Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon, and she was fired. But as Jim Cornette said back then, you weren't sent to rehab, you were sent packing.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that this becomes that vicious circle, unfortunately. Like even though she wasn't taking major bumps anymore, like she was still taking minor bumps, and she still had the injury she sustained, obviously from all the other times she was wrestling prior to that.
But the thing is that you need to take bumps on a constant basis to keep your body fresh for it.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
As shit as that sounds, your body gets atrophied. Is that the word for it? Atrophied for it? Because, like, as I said, as somebody who takes bumps on a regular basis, I can tell you the times I've taken off, I feel it the next day when I go back.
Yeah, you're gonna wake up sore as fuck, and then like, yeah.
My shoulder, my back's always. As soon as I have any financial time off, that's what hurts. Now that's only like a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month. Imagine do that for about 6-7 months. Your body's going to be fucked.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just think that there should be like, if you could take bumps maybe 3 or 4 days a week, and the rest of the week you're not having to take bumps. I think that's far better than taking a bump every day. Which is what she had to go through. I enjoyed how they elaborated on her wrestling career and then her managing career, but they could have focused a bit more on. I agree.
Yeah,
I disagree with you, Goku, because people know about her managing career because they know about her doing Macho Man. Another thing with,
but they still should have touched on it. This is one of my negatives, that they still should have touched on her managing career at least a little bit.
I thought they did, but I think the reason they did mention her wrestling career is because maybe not a lot of people know about that, but know about this.
Well, now she's no longer in the WWE. She reunites with Cornette and worked for Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah.
And by this time, she was getting just a little bit older, and she was slowing down a bit. And
there's another thing they forgot to mention. They forgot to mention that she was in ECW for a cup of coffee.
Yes, she was.
Oh, really?
They totally glossed over that too.
Yeah, I think she was slowed down not because of age. I think she was slowed down because she was addicted to the pills.
Yeah.
That too. But she was also past her prime. You know what I mean? At the same time. So, but she was in Smoky Mountain, and she was still self-medicating, and it was taking a toll. And even Cornette kind of noticed that too. It was a shame, really. Now, as always in wrestling, once you are out of one particular establishment, you go to the other, and as long as WWE's been around, even though they bought out all the territories, they've always had like a number 2 to go up against. In this case, it was WCW, and Bischoff brought. Oh, sorry, my parrot. Calm down, mate. Calm down. All right. Bischoff brought. Let me just come here, mate. Come here.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't want to. Okay, fair enough. All right. Bischoff brought Sherry into WCW, and she became the manager of Harlem Heat. But her constant performing was like a constant performing. On being on drugs was, and her performances was kind of showing in her face, because you could be. You might be able to cover up your drug taking, but after a while, your face doesn't cover it up.
Your poker face is gone after a while.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the bit regarding Medusa, because she was then eventually subsequently released, and Medusa mentioned how there was a double standard, because male wrestlers looked haggard. Mm-hmm. They were fucking taking drugs. They were doing steroids and God knows what back then.
And not only that, the doctor would write the prescription for the wrestlers right in front of them.
Yeah, but I think with Sherry, her problem was substantial. It wasn't like I think with Scott Hall, he didn't get substantial until later on. With her, it was substantial by the time she got there.
But like she's not wrestling these guys like Jeff Hardy would or stuff like that. That's far more dangerous, being in the ring, being under the influence, having to put somebody's life in your hand who's intoxicated, than being a valet, so.
But she still had a problem, though, that nobody can deny that. Like, you could see it in her, too. Like, if you go back and watch, like, late 96, 97 WCW, and you look at Sherry, you're like, yeah, she's gone. Like, she's there in the physical sense, but mentally and emotionally, she was already gone.
I forgot how many stars went to ECW. Sherry's got old. Yeah, they all did. I mean,
Wrestling Bios just covered Scott Hall's running ECW. That's a channel that everybody needs to sub to. Wrestling Bios.
You go where you can for work. I mean, it's amazing. Like when you watch these guys in WWE, and they're still wrestling in the indies, and they're like wrestling in school gymnasiums and stuff like that.
What's happened to Alberto Del Rio?
For real.
Yeah, 10 years ago he was wrestling Fabian.
Matt Riddle,
and now he's wrestling in Fabian Little.
Yeah, he won the Royal Rumble. He's WWE champion. All of these things.
Oh, Del Rio's a dark side waiting to happen. I can't wait to cover that episode. I can't wait.
Del Rio is a dark side. For sure.
I can't wait to cover that episode.
By the way, that needs to happen like next season, because
yes.
But the thing is that when you're a professional wrestler, you work anywhere because you love it.
Yeah, you love the business. You love what it is it's the adulation of the fans. That's why people get into it.
Yeah, because you don't care.
At the same time, you hope. I'm sorry, but I think at the same time you're hoping to get re-signed by the WWE. Yeah. I mean, really, this is what you do, and you're hoping to work back in the big time.
But the way to do that is you need to be in like a big indies. You need to be. I was going to say Ring of Honor, but that's not around. But you need to be in like a TNA, Fabian. A British indie like an FCW.
I'm just saying it's extremely demoralizing when you're wrestling in front of 70,000 or whatever, or WrestleMania, or you're wrestling in front of 30,000 on a weekly basis on Raw and SmackDown, and then boom, now you're in like a school gymnasium. Like they from one extreme to the other, dude. You know what I mean? It really is.
But the thing is, if you connect more with the 50 people in the gymnasium, you're going to get a buzz off that. You're not going to get 30,000 people.
Yeah, you'll still get the adulation. That's why people are in it. I mean, I know it's to ultimately go to one of the big companies, but the real reason is because a lot of these guys just can't give up that raw of the crowd.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's what you want. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I agree. I mean, they don't want to go back to normality, but many people don't. Life after wrestling is so depressing for many wrestlers. You can be the top. It's hard to maintain that spot. Additionally, you get 5 in WCW, and then
where can you go?
Yeah, exactly.
ECW maybe, and maybe
other
countries.
I mean, this is the thing with once again with all the territories gone. Like there's less places to work. I mean, to be a wrestler, to even train yourself to be a wrestler is, it's a risky proposition.
Anyway, you got to bet on yourself. But go ahead.
So
By the way, guys, I am trained to be a pro wrestler, so like,
He mentions this every time we talk about wrestling. So.
I think he mentioned it 5 times so far.
No. But
anyway,
what I'm saying is that like you've got to keep yourself fresh and out there and stuff like that, because what you're saying is right. People do want to be on the big show.
Anyway, however, after WCW, because she's done them all now, there's nowhere to go. And Sherry was in her 40s, and rumors were circulating that Sherry was now also taking Oxycontin. Martell ended up marrying a civilian, as they would say. His name was Robert Skrull, and the civilian expected Sherry to kind of remain famous and relevant, but that wasn't necessarily the case. And he never really did much to help her with her addictions either. And Jared mentioned that he kind of put a wedge between the families too. So not much love for Robert.
Because Jim Cornette said that basically he kept addicted to basically other program pills because he was on the gravy train to a point, I reckon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, in 2006, Sherry Martell gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. And Sherry, she was the second woman to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Who was the first? Was it Moolah?
Moolah.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, Sherry looked at the Hall of Fame, unfortunately, at the end after being inducted, but tried to remain optimistic. And something was in, like, the rumors are in the grapevine and all of that sort of stuff, that she was hopefully, once she gets her back sorted and gets off her meds, that she could be a trainer for women wrestling in the WWE.
Yeah, I think they would have sent her down to FCW. She would have been one of the lead coaches down there.
Yeah,
that's what I think would have happened. She would have been bringing up like a lot of going on a rant on Bischoff. I'm gonna go watch her Hall of Fame speech when we're done here because it was fucking great. She buried Bischoff, and then he shows up on camera and he's like this.
It's weird with Bischoff. He was a bit like the Nick Khan of his day to a degree.
Yeah,
because like sometimes he just misses things. Like you got somebody like Sherry and you don't help her. Like help her at least, Bischoff. I mean, you got the time to do so. If WWE ain't going to help you, you should. But he doesn't. And on top of that, like when you miss out, when you miss out on people like Steve Austin and not acknowledge him as being a top tier guy and think he's going to be a mid carder for the rest of his career.
Yep.
Yeah, you haven't got an eye for talent, but regardless, at 9:30 a.m. on June the 15th, 2007, Sherry Martell passed away at the tender young age of 49 years old.
God,
yeah.
I remember when that happened. I remember because I was watching it. Sorry,
2007 was a fucking bad year. That was a bad year. We lost so many people that year.
Was that the year of Eddie Benoit as well?
That was the year Benoit passed, and we lost so many others. We lost like Mike Awesome and a bunch of other fucking people that year. Like I think Crush died that year, and a few other people passed away. 2007 was a bad year because it seemed like every other week you heard a wrestler passed away.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad. I mean,
all from that era, though. You understand? Like it just takes its toll. Like you can't live forever.
No, you can't.
Yeah, and it's what I have problems. That's why I'm a little bit afraid for Jeff Hardy, because if you ever watch Pro Wrestling Report when it used to be on YouTube or whatever, there's a thing where they talked about Sherry passing away because they knew her a little bit, that she was a super friendly person, but there was a dark side to her.
I think Jeff Hardy's got way more going for him. Like the guy that that charismatic and saying like we're in a world of social media now and stuff like that. Even what's his name, Marty Jannetty, he's taking advantage of that and doing podcasts all the bloody time. They're finding relevancy in some sort of way. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, hello Ron. The amount of prescriptions listed at the end was insane. Yes, and hello Ron. Yep, nice to see you again, mate. So there was an investigation because she died. Obviously, at that age, Alabama police did an investigation, and they concluded with the investigation with her dying of an overdose. And Medusa then mentioned that ironically, that at her own funeral, there were loads of wrestlers who happened to be drugged up themselves. One of them being
Jake was the highest of the high that day.
Jake Roberts himself, who remembers very little, but did mention how mad he was at Martell for leaving her, at such a young age. So leaving him, at such a young age.
Because you can tell he still cared for her quite a lot.
Yeah, he still loved her. I mean, like, it's 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 just how it is, like, I'm sure there was still something there, and we then get to Jared, and he shows some letters to him from Sherry. Something we've also seen from other wrestlers before, showing writing to their children, and Sherry very kindly showed a lot of appreciation to her ex-husband's new wife and the stepmother to Jared, because this person brought up Jared while Sherry was away trying to become a wrestler, and didn't hate on her. Actually appreciated that there was a mother figure, a maternal figure, to bring up her son, and you can see the love that them two had for each other, as well in this episode.
Yep.
So, anything to say before I summarize this episode?
It was one of the saddest, like I said, that I've ever seen, honestly. I mean, a lot of this stuff about Sherry we kind of already knew, but man, this is what happens when you choose your career and drugs and shit over your family. Like, if you're going to get into wrestling, be mindful of what you're doing. Be very mindful.
I think more focus needs to be put on the industry itself.
Yeah,
that it needs to treat its staff like human beings. Don't work them every day. Even though you're right about the body needing to be used to taking bumps, it also needs to be used to taking heels, and and not having to work every single day, so these wrestlers don't start self-medicating and becoming drug addicts and alcoholics.
Yep. And
stuff like that to get them through the pain and all of that.
Yeah, and I know it's never going to happen, but I'll die on the hill of wrestling needs an off season. Do we really need to have wrestling the last 2 months of the year? I don't think so.
Well, I think you're right, Jose. I think they need to space it out more, because the thing is, it will feel more special then.
Yep.
Because the thing is, if you're clamoring for it and you've not had it for why want wrestling? As soon as it comes back, you're like, yeah, it's back again. It brings that excitement to it, because look, people, even though they know it's fake, look, people know films are fake, but how do they get up for movies? Trailers, flaming, build up.
Yep.
You build up once. So if you space out wrestling events more, you can say, right, we're going to build up to, I don't know, let's say,
okay, I'll give you an example. Survivor Series is our last show of the year. That's it. Survivor Series is our last show. That's it. And then we'll give you recaps, and then we'll have the guys come to the studio. We'll do sit down interviews.
Yes.
They could sit and reflect on the year, and they're like, all right, what do you want for the upcoming year? And then they could talk about I want to win the Rumble. I want to win a title. I want to do this.
I'd personally have one weekly show where guys who have feuds with each other that I want to feature on my show do one match with each other, or they do a storylines thinking where maybe they touch but they do not touch each other until that pay-per-view to build up the one more.
Yeah, you could do a sit-down interview of two guys that have been feuding or whatever. Okay, why do you hate this guy? Why do you want to kick his ass so bad? Yeah, I miss those days when they used to do the sit-down interviews like that, like with Austin and Rock. That was the last great sit-down interview I think I saw with JR.
Yeah, and people, when that happened, what happened? People bought it more because the guys weren't touching each other, looking at each other. They were saying stuff to each other.
Yeah,
they didn't physically touch, and so they got in that ring.
Yeah, Rock's like, I need to beat your ass. And Austin's like, well, you're the champion. I want your belt, and I'm going to beat your ass. And that was the simplest story that they could tell.
No, I didn't mind a little pre-match scuffle when they get broken. I don't mind that, as long as they're not wrestling each other.
Yeah.
Until that match. But anyway, let's wrap things up now, guys. So to summarize, to be recognized as a wrestler in this industry, Sherry gave up everything: her husband, her son, her body, and kind of her soul, just to die young. But once again, the wrestling industry worked another employee to death, and always failed to understand the pitfall their performers go through. And that, unfortunately, is what it means to be a wrestler of that particular year. For every Hulk Hogan, there are an abundance of wrestlers. And even Hogan himself, his spine's all screwed up from all the leg drops he's taken, But regardless, he's made so much money, he will still live a decent life. But for every Hulk Hogan, there's an abundance of wrestlers who have been buried by him, who never made it to the top, who never earned that great money who died young or live a sheltered life now, can't move as well as they once did. And this is what the industry does to you. When you see people like Virgil having to make people pay for your autograph, that's what this industry does to you. It doesn't help everyone out. It only helps some of them out, and everyone else is just there to fall to the wayside, and it's not fair.
Yeah, it's like Kevin Nash said. It's like Kevin Nash said in the shoot in WCW 2000. He's like, "Here's the deal. Y'all think the life of a pro wrestler is cool? Let me tell you, it's not when it's over, because we don't get dental, we don't get health insurance, we don't get vision. The sons of bitches don't even pay for our Social Security. That's how fucked up the business is. They don't even get Social Security."
Undertaker gets taken care of so well by Vince McMahon and get given rings put through. I saw some of the documentaries. Some of the stuff that he goes, no other wrestler would be given the level of Medicare in America like Undertaker would be given.
Yeah, you have to be a circle of life guy. And when I say a circle of life guy, I mean like a Hulk Hogan, a Steve Austin, a Rock, an Undertaker, a Shawn Michaels.
The cream of the crop.
Yeah, you got to be those guys to get that circle of life treatment.
Yes. Currently, many wrestlers are injured and recover. Once they recover, they're back on the road. Yeah.
Yep.
Like your recovery is your vacation.
I mean, look what happened to Becky Lynch. She's literally exhausted herself, but because the powers that be don't trust
Liv Morgan
with the title, they're like, "Oh, we'll put it on Becky Lynch." It's like, you give it to Liv Morgan, let her run with it for a bit.
Let's see how it works. I know she looks a bit like a Barbie doll, but come on, give her
less than a fucking week. Jesus Christ Almighty.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, guys,
we gotta give our ratings.
I'm going to give this episode. Unfortunately, it was a sad episode, but in a way, but it's just something we kind of seen before.
Mm-hmm.
With wrestlers, not in a way. Like the homage, they get the homages and they get the recognition by our fans, but not necessarily by the industry. And it's a sad episode overall. Is it dark side worthy? A little bit here and there. I'll give it. I hate to say it, I gotta give it a 6. Jose?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 6. I mean, honestly, like Boss Man said, it's more of a documentary than a dark side episode. If you wanted to see a documentary, I would probably go ahead and give it maybe an 8 because they went in detail for a lot of stuff. But for a dark side episode, it's a 6.
Boss Man.
For a documentary, I give it an 8. For a dark side episode, I'll give it a 4. Because, as I said, like it was sad that she had to leave her family behind. It was sad that she had to leave her son to be raised by somebody else. It was sad that like she got into the drug habits. Right, all those things, as you said, were sad. But considering how good the last 2 episodes have been of Dark Side, like I watched the Chris Colt one that you guys said to me to watch. That was really good. And last episode, who was it?
Chris Adams.
Those are the best episodes this season.
Yeah. Those are legitimate, really good Dark Side episodes. And this just felt like it's just filler. It's like, who's with someone kind of tragic crime? All right, Sherry Martell. It's like, right, if I do A&E on Sherry Martell, I don't think that's like, as you say, like Alberto.
A&E wouldn't do like this though. That's the only thing. Like A&E doesn't really go.
A&E would prop her up. They would prop her up and gloss over a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
But next week is going to be Sandman. That will be a Dark Side of the Ring episode. Jim Fullerton.
I hope so. I know Sandman the person and Total Enigma. So we'll see how that pans out.
I don't know.
Anyway, guys, out there in YouTube land, thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe to NerdTube. Jose and Gaz, thanks very much for joining me on the stream. Take care now. We'll see you guys later for our next podcast. Bye-bye.
Bye.